I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Picture this. You're in the cockpit of a C-130 Hercules.
Right.
It's 2005. You're in Afghanistan, active duty. The air conditioning is roaring, the whole frame is vibrating, and you've got that smell of hydraulic fluid and, dust.
It's sensory overload. It's your office, but it's a loud one.
Exactly. It's your office. You've flown hundreds of these missions, picking up cargo, dropping off troops, hauling prisoners. It's routine. It's war, but it's your 9 to 5.
It's the logistics of conflict. Most of it is, frankly, boring until the moment it becomes absolutely terrifying.
And for this pilot, the terror didn't come from a missile lock. It came from the cargo.
It came from the manifest, yeah.
So you get your orders, fly into Bagram Airfield. Standard stuff. Usually Bagram means you're picking up high-value assets.
Which is code for Taliban leadership, Al-Qaeda, the guys who get a bag over their head and a one-way trip to a black site.
Right, but this time you land, you taxi onto the hard stand, and the whole vibe is just wrong.
Wrong is putting it mildly. The way he described it, the feeling was oppressive.
Instead of the usual ground crew, tired kids in reflective vests, you're met by this group of guys. The pilot later called them the babysitters.
The babysitters. I love that term.
Yeah.
Because it sounds so benign. But in the intel world, a babysitter is the guy who's there to make sure you don't see something.
Exactly. These guys are clearly special ops, no name tags, gear that isn't standard issue, just these dead serious faces.
And the first thing they say to him, before the engines have even had a chance to cool down, is the classic line.
This never happened. You don't talk about this. This mission does not exist.
Which is pretty much the opening line to every military cover-up story in history. But usually that's where it ends. The pilot keeps his mouth shut, flies the plane, gets his pension.
Not this time. They escort him and his loadmaster to a hangar. And inside, there's a single pallet. Just a standard Air Force cargo pallet, a 463L, and there's this huge object on it, covered by a tarp. And the pilot says the first thing that hit him wasn't what he saw, it was the smell.
And let's pause on the smell, because in these kinds of accounts, that olfactory detail, that's often the most telling. It's so primal.
He said it was overpowering. He described it as a mix of just intense body odor, like a wild feral musk and death, like rotting meat. But that musk was distinct. It wasn't just a dead body. It was something animalistic.
Pheromones, maybe. High-level predators often have a scent that triggers a primal fear response in humans. It's an evolutionary warning sign. He was reacting to a biological signal.
So he walks up to this pallet. The babysitters are watching him like hawks. He peeks under the tarp, and he sees a man.
But not just a man.
Not just a man. He sees a humanoid figure curled into a fetal position. Now, you have to remember, a standard Air Force pallet is about 108 inches long. That's 9 feet.
9 feet of solid aluminum. Got it.
This man is curled up, knees to his chest, and his head and his feet are hanging off the ends of the pallet.
Wait, hold on. I'm trying to do the math in my head. If you're folded in half and you're still longer than a 9-foot pallet, we're not talking about a really tall basketball player here.
We're talking about a being that, when uncurled, is estimated to be between 10 and 12 feet tall.
12 feet.
Yeah.
That's 2 feet taller than the rim of a basketball hoop.
Biologically, that just shouldn't be possible. The square cube law alone suggests a human frame that size would just collapse under its own weight.
Well, hang on to that thought about weight and density.
Yeah.
Because the pilot, he reaches out and he taps the body through the tarp.
He touched it?
He did. He said it was solid as a rock. He couldn't tell if it was just extreme rigor mortis or if it was just pure, unbelievable muscle density. He said it felt like tapping a stone wall.
And the features. Did you get a look at the face, the skin?
He did. He described the skin as pale, almost a chalky white. And the hair was bright red, like a fiery auburn red, which is a detail that immediately sends up flares. You see that motif in so many ancient legends about giants. The Paiute tribe in Nevada talked about red-haired giants. The Bible mentions them. It's a recurring, specific detail.
And then he looks at the hands and feet, and this is the detail that, for me, just pushes it over the edge into something else entirely.
Let me guess. Not 5 fingers.
6. 6 digits on each hand, 6 toes on each foot, polydactyly.
Okay, so we have to just stop and unpack this, because today we are jumping into the deepest end of the pool. We're looking at the research of Timothy Alberino, and the entity we're describing right now. It's known as the Kandahar Giant.
But we aren't stopping in 2005 Afghanistan, because Alberino makes this incredible connection between this this biological relic, and something happening right now, or as recently as 2023. We're going to pivot from an ancient giant to something incredibly high-tech and, frankly, horrifying in the jungles of Peru.
The pelicaras,
Yeah.
the face peelers.
It sounds like a bad horror movie.
It does. But Alberino's thesis is that these two phenomena, a giant with spear in a cave and armored entities on hoverboards in the Amazon, are somehow two pieces of the same, very disturbing puzzle.
So you have a biological monster on one hand and a technological one on the other.
Exactly. And our mission today is to look at the evidence Alberino presents for both, critique it, and just ask the question, what if? What if the world is fundamentally stranger than we've been led to believe?
I'm ready to be skeptical, though. I mean, a 12-foot, six-fingered redhead in a war zone. Everyone had a phone with a camera in 2005. Where are the pictures?
And that is absolutely the first question you have to ask. But this pilot, who Alberino interviewed in silhouette because he claims he's still active duty, he insists the security was absolute. No phones allowed. But he has one detail that is incredibly hard to fake.
What's that?
The weight.
The weight.
Think about it. A C-130 isn't a pickup truck. You don't just toss stuff in the back. The loadmaster have to calculate the center of gravity to the pound. If you get the weight distribution wrong, the plane becomes unstable, it can crash on takeoff. It's pure physics.
So Loadmaster had to weigh the pallet?
He had to, and he did. Total weight on the manifest was 1,500 pounds. A standard 463L pallet weighs about 290 pounds. Add some netting, the tarp, maybe another 10 pounds. You do the math, and you are left with a body that weighs approximately 1,100 pounds.
1,100 pounds.
For a bipedal humanoid. I mean, an NFL lineman who is 350 pounds is considered a monster.
Yeah.
This is 3 times that. It implies a bone and muscle density that is just, it's off the charts.
That gives me pause. Because you can fake a story, you can fake a blurry photo, but a Loadmaster is a numbers guy. He lives and dies by those calculations. If he wrote down 1,500 pounds, it's because the scale said 1,500 pounds.
Precisely. It's a hard data point in a very soft story.
Yeah.
So the pilot, naturally, he's stunned. He looks at one of the babysitters and asks, what on earth is this?
And I'm surprised they told him anything.
Well, apparently, in that moment of, I don't know, shared shock or adrenaline, one of them actually gave him the backstory.
So where did it come from?
He said it was killed in a remote cave, deep in the mountains of Afghanistan. But they weren't out there looking for giants. They were hunting the Taliban.
Right. Standard mission profile for the time.
A unit was doing surveillance, and they noticed something odd. Villagers were regularly leaving offerings, food, goats, at the mouth of this one specific cave.
So the assumption would be they're supporting a high-value target. A Taliban leader, maybe even someone from Al-Qaeda.
Exactly. If I'm the commander, I'm thinking we may have just found a major player. So they send in a team, a special ops team. They go in to clear the cave.
Yeah.
And the team goes dark. Complete radio silence. No check-ins. Just gone.
That's a commander's worst nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have to send in a second team, a larger one, a recovery and assault team. Their mission is to find out what happened to the first team and neutralize the threat.
They go in expecting an ambush, a firefight with insurgents.
They go in, weapons hot, ready for anything, and they don't find the Taliban.
They find the redhead.
They find this 12-foot monstrosity. And the report, and this is gruesome, so just be warned, the report says they found the giant actively eating the remains of the first special ops team.
Eating them, like an animal.
Like a predator. He was consuming them. This immediately changes the entire context. This is not an enemy combatant. This is a man-eater.
So I'm guessing they didn't try to read its Miranda rights.
No. The giant attacked them on sight. And here's the detail that sounds like it's straight out of The Lord of the Rings. It was armed.
Armed with what? An AK-47?
A spear. A massive iron-tipped spear.
A spear in 2005 against a squad of special forces with M4s and body armor. That sounds insane.
It does, until you think about the physics of it.
Yeah.
Even an 1,100-pound creature with incredible strength, the kinetic energy behind that store thrust would be like getting hit by a small car. Kevlar isn't going to stop that.
And it didn't.
Apparently not. The account says one of the soldiers, a man often referred to as Dan in the telling of this story, was skewered, just impaled right through his armor.
My God.
The rest of the squad just opened up, full auto, concentrated fire. They lit him up with 5.56 rounds, probably 7.62 from a support weapon. But it took a sustained volley to bring him down. Eventually, a shot to the head finally killed it. And that is the carcass that ended up on the pilot's pallet in Bagram.
You know, the thing that gets me is the sheer collision of timelines. You've got night
Hmm.
vision goggles and satellite communications and a turboprop transport plane and a cannibal giant with a spear. It's just so jarring.
That's what they call high strangeness.
Hmm.
If you were making up a story, you'd probably give the giant some kind of advanced weapon or make it an alien. But a spear,
Mm.
it grounds it in this weirdly ancient primal reality.
So Alberino has told this story many times, and he mentioned something really interesting about the reaction he gets in certain circles. He says he can talk to high-level military guys, politicians, about UFOs all day long.
Right. And that's become almost mainstream now, hasn't it? You could literally watch congressional hearings with fighter pilots talking about unidentified anomalous phenomena. It's almost a safe topic in D.C.
But the Kandahar Giant.
He says the mood changes instantly. He tells us one specific story about being at an event and asking a very high-ranking Air Force official, someone he knew had been in that theater of operations, about the giant.
And what happened? Did the guy just laugh it off, call him crazy?
The exact opposite. Alberino says the man physically recoiled, like he'd been hit. The blood drained from his face, his eyes went wide with panic. He pointed at his phone as if to say, "We're being recorded," and just completely shut down.
Wow.
And then the man's wife apparently came over, tugged on Alberino's sleeve and whispered, "He can't talk about that."
He can't talk about that. Not, that's a crazy story, not that never happened, but that's forbidden.
Exactly. It implies a level of classification or secrecy that is somehow different, maybe even higher, than the UFO topic. Alberino's take is that the giants are too real. A UFO is a light in the sky, it's ambiguous. But a 12-foot body on a pallet that is biological proof of a history that we are not supposed to know.
So that leads to the big question, why? Why cover it up? If you find a new species of giant humanoid, that's the discovery of the century, why not put it on the cover of Nature? Why fly it to a secret hangar in Ohio and bury it forever?
This is where Alberino's investigation goes into some very strange territory. He suggests the primary motive isn't biological or anthropological. He thinks it's occult.
Whoa, okay. Now, occult is a word that carries a lot of baggage. Most people think of, Ouija boards and seances. How does that fit in with national security?
We have to use the classical definition of occult, which just means hidden knowledge.
Yeah.
He's talking about the pursuit of forbidden information and power. And he points to a really weird piece of data, the Podesta emails.
The WikiLeaks dump from 2016. I remember that being all about political drama.
It was. But buried deep in those thousands of mundane emails was a very, very strange query sent to John Podesta, who was in Hillary Clinton's inner circle. The email was an inquiry about the location of the body of Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh, as in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the ancient Sumerian king.
The very same. The king who was described in the text as being 2/3 God, 1/3 man, a giant. So the question is, why are people at that level of government discussing the location of the body of a mythological giant king from 5,000 years ago?
That is bizarre. It sounds like the setup for a new Indiana Jones movie.
Alberino argues that this points to a very real and very old interest among certain elite factions in these beings for what he calls necromantic reasons.
Necromancy, as in speaking to the dead.
Not necessarily raising them as zombies, but communicating with their spirits. Alberino has done a lot of field work in Sardinia, in Italy. And there are these huge megalithic structures there called the tombs of the giants.
I've seen pictures of those. They look like massive, elongated stone graves.
Mainstream archaeology just calls them communal burial sites. But Alberino went there, measured them, and says they are absolutely large enough to hold the bodies of giants. But more importantly, he says, it's about the architecture. They're designed like wombs. Shape of the entrance, the internal structure, even the acoustics. He believes they were designed for a ritual called the rite of incubation. The idea was that an initiate would go inside the tomb, the womb of the earth, and sleep or meditate in the presence of the mighty ones.
The spirits of the dead giants.
Exactly, as a form of psycho-spiritual technology. You were trying to commune with these entities to gain knowledge, power, forbidden secrets. Alberino's theory is that you're not just trying to contact your dead grandmother, you're trying to contact the Nephilim. You're trying to download the knowledge of the gods.
And his theory is that modern elites, these high-level occultists in government and military, want the Kandahar Giant's body for the same reason.
It would be the ultimate intelligence asset. If you subscribe to the worldview, where these beings are the offspring of fallen angels, like in the Book of Enoch, then their DNA, their very essence, contains illicit knowledge of technology, genetics, warfare.
So the government grabs the body, flies it to a lab, not to put it in a museum, but to interface with it. to reverse engineer it, both biologically. I mean, imagine the super soldier applications of that kind of DNA. And in this view, spiritually, it's a Luciferian pursuit.
Let's define that term Luciferian, because I think most people just hear Satanism. But in this context of technology and power, what does it actually mean?
That's a great question. You have to strip away the Sunday school imagery. In this philosophical context, Luciferian refers to the drive for illumination, the pursuit of knowledge that is forbidden, the Promethean impulse to steal fire from the gods to empower humanity, no matter the cost. It's about apotheosis.
Becoming gods ourselves.
Through technology, through genetics, through forbidden knowledge, yes. Okay, that makes a terrifying kind of sense. But Alberino says this isn't even a new thing for the U.S. government. He connects this all the way back to the Smithsonian.
Yes, the so-called Smithsonian Gate. Huh. This is a fascinating and largely forgotten piece of American history. In the 19th century, as settlers and archaeologists were digging into the burial mounds of the Ohio Valley.
The mound builder cultures.
Right. They were constantly finding skeletons that were, according to the local newspapers and town records, and even early scientific journals, 7, 8, even 9 feet tall, often with strange anomalies like double rows of teeth or red hair.
Abraham Lincoln even wrote about it, didn't he?
He did, in a speech about Niagara Falls, of all things. He was musing on deep time, and he wrote, "The eyes of that species of extinct giants, whose bones fill the mounds of America, have gazed on Niagara as ours do now."
Whose bones fill the mounds? He says it like it's a known fact, like saying, the deer live in the forest.
Because, at the time, it was a commonly known thing. But then came Major John Wesley Powell. He became the director of the Bureau of Ethnology at the Smithsonian, and he had a very specific, very political narrative he needed to protect.
And this is where science gets tangled up in politics.
Completely. Powell was a firm believer in isolationism. That was the academic dogma of the day, that Native American cultures developed in total isolation from the rest of the world before Columbus. This was crucial for the ideology of manifest destiny.
How so?
Well, if the indigenous people were just primitive savages who developed on their own, then taking their land, while tragic, fit into a kind of evolutionary narrative. But if you find a 9-foot skeleton with red hair buried in copper armor of a Phoenician design.
That suggests diffusionism. That suggests ancient mariners were crossing the oceans thousands of years ago. It implies a complex international ancient history on this continent. It messes up the whole narrative.
It completely destroys it. So Powell, according to these researchers, instituted a cover-up. He sent explicit instructions to his field agents to ignore or suppress any finds that didn't fit the isolationist model. Giant bones were labeled hoaxes or pathological specimens, or they were just crated up and shipped to the Smithsonian basement, never to be seen again.
So we have a 19th century academic cover-up that, in Alberino's view, has morphed into a 21st century military occult cover-up.
That's the through line. The continuous suppression of a hidden history that involves non-human or perihuman intelligences coexisting with us on this planet.
Okay, so that's the ancient side of the coin, the biological giant, a relic from the deep past.
Right.
But Alberino's investigation takes this incredibly sharp turn into the immediate present, from a cave in Afghanistan to the jungles of Peru in 2023.
This is where the story, for me, gets even more disturbing. We're leaving the realm of old bones and entering the world of high-tech terror. This is the story of the Pelecaras.
The face peelers. I mean, even the name is just horrifying.
It is. The legend of the Pelecaras goes back decades in the Peruvian Amazon to the 1980s. Locals told stories of strange foreigners, or gringos, who would stalk the jungle and surgically remove people's faces and organs.
And for a long time, that was just dismissed as folklore, right? A boogeyman story, maybe based on fears of organ traffickers?
Exactly. It was a local legend. Until July of 2023. In a tiny, remote village called San Antonio de Pintiacu. This is deep in the jungle. You can only get there by riverboat. And suddenly, the Inky-2 people who lived there found themselves under siege.
What were they reporting?
They were calling the police, the military, anyone who would listen. They were reporting nightly attacks by 7-foot-tall, armored beings who were impervious to shotgun blasts. They were seeing silent, flying craft. They were reporting attempted abductions.
Now, the government had an explanation for this, and I have to say, the official story sounds almost as wild as the alien story.
The official line from the Peruvian government, which was then picked up by the international press, was that these attacks were being carried out by illegal gold miners with jetpacks.
With jetpacks, like something out of a James Bond movie. In the middle of the Amazon.
That was the narrative.
Yeah.
That these criminal syndicates were using jetpacks to terrorize the local villagers, to scare them off the land.
Alberino did not buy that for 1 second. And we need to break down why, because on the surface someone might think, well, maybe.
It only sounds plausible if you have zero knowledge of how jetpack technology actually works. Let's just look at the facts. The most advanced jet suit we have is probably the one from Gravity Industries.
Okay, I've seen videos of that. It's real.
It is real, but it has serious limitations. First, it is deafeningly loud. We're talking 130 decibels. It's a jet engine strapped to your back.
So much for a stealthy approach.
Absolutely not. Second, the exhaust is incredibly hot, hundreds of degrees. If you tried to fly that through a dense jungle canopy at night, you would set the trees on fire. You would be a massive thermal target for any satellite overhead.
And the flight time, what's the range on one of those?
About 5 to 8 minutes, max. So the official story is that these miners are making 5-minute flights at night through dense trees, silently, without burning anything down. It's logistically impossible. It's absurd.
So if it wasn't miners, what did Alberino find when he actually went there?
He got on a plane, flew to Peru, and traveled upriver. He was actually invited by the Apu, the village chief. He brought a security team with a former Marine. He brought night vision equipment, flashlights, the works.
And what was the situation on the ground?
He said he found a community in the grip of mass post-traumatic stress disorder. This was not a village telling ghost stories. This was a village at war. The men were armed with shotguns, patrolling the perimeter all night, absolutely terrified. They weren't sleeping, kids weren't playing, they were under constant threat.
And their descriptions of the attackers, it sounds like something out of a Marvel movie.
The Green Goblin comparison was literally made by the villagers. They described these 7-foot-tall beings standing on circular hoverboards.
Hoverboards, not jetpacks.
A critical distinction. These boards were silent. They just floated. And it wasn't just the boards. Multiple witnesses described the entities as having anti-gravity boots. They saw glowing circular discs on the soles of their feet.
So they could step off the board and still hover.
That's what was described. One villager found a footprint in the mud that wasn't a boot print at all. It was just 2 perfect circular indentations, as if the being had floated just above the ground and the force field, or whatever it was, had pressed into the soil.
That's a very specific technological detail. That's not something you just make up.
And the beings themselves, always around 7 feet tall, clad in armored bodysuits, either black or sometimes silver, helmets with large almond-shaped lenses that glowed, which is probably some kind of night vision or a heads-up display.
And they saw more than just the individual attackers, right? They saw a larger craft.
They did. Multiple witnesses from different locations describe what they called the mothership, an acorn-shaped or sometimes delta-shaped vehicle, totally silent, about the size of a small helicopter. But here's the detail that completely rules out the gold miner theory. They said it was translucent.
Translucent, you mean see-through?
Like a fine mesh, is how one fisherman described it. He said he looked up and saw the craft hovering over the river, and he could actually see the sky and the stars through the hull, and could make out figures moving inside.
That sounds like active camouflage or some kind of metamaterial. That is not something a gold mining cartel has access to. That's next-generation stealth technology.
Or beyond next generation. And they saw these craft over the city of Nota, too, which is a regional hub with a Peruvian military base. If you're just a criminal trying to scare some isolated villagers, you do not fly your secret spaceship over a military installation.
Okay, we have to talk about the attack on the girl, Talia, because this is what elevates it from just a series of strange sightings to a direct violent assault. This is where the name Face Peeler is earned in blood.
This is by far the most harrowing part of Alberino's investigation. He conducted a detailed interview with Talia and her father. Talia is a 15-year-old girl. She was just in her family's backyard at dusk, picking some fruit from a tree.
And they came for her.
2 of them, silently on the hoverboards. One grabbed her from behind and covered her mouth. The other one grabbed her feet. They just lifted her off the ground.
They were abducting her.
They flew her a short distance behind a chicken coop where they would be out of sight from the house, and they landed. And then they began a clinical procedure.
What did they do?
The first thing she remembers is them using something like a nasal syringe to shoot a substance up her nose.
A sedative.
Almost certainly. She said she felt groggy, but she was still conscious. Then, one of them applied a cream to her face and neck.
A cream?
And this is a key detail. Talia heard them speak to each other.
They spoke what language?
Spanish. She said one of them spoke with a heavy gringo accent like an American. The other one sounded like a native Spanish speaker. And she heard the gringo say, "No uses mucho, va a malograr la carne."
Don't use too much, it will ruin the flesh.
Exactly. It's so chillingly professional, like a surgeon or a butcher discussing their work.
And then,
And then they took out a tool. She described it as a kind of light, a laser scalpel. And they started an incision right under her jawline.
oh my God, they were actually going to peel her face.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
But the sedative hadn't worked properly. She was terrified, and she started to fight back, to struggle. The one holding her slapped her across the face. And in that moment, she managed to let out a scream.
And the village heard her.
Her family and neighbors heard. They came running out with their shotguns and flashlights. The beings were compromised. They tried to lift her again to fly away, but with her struggling, they couldn't manage her dead weight on the hoverboards, so they dropped her. And they just shot up through the jungle canopy and vanished.
And Talia survived.
She survived. But Alberino saw the physical evidence, the precise surgical cut on her neck, and the psychological trauma. I mean, can you imagine? A 15-year-old girl who was nearly dissected by armored monsters in her own backyard.
So that brings us to the million-dollar question. Who are they? What is this?
And this is where Alberino moves from reporting to theorizing based on the evidence. And he points out a massive contradiction in the story.
Which is what?
If you were an advanced alien race or a breakaway human civilization with anti-gravity and laser scalpels and invisible spaceships, why are you so bad at peeling faces?
Right. It's clumsy. They botched the abduction of Talia. There were other reports of attacks that were messy, victims left alive with partial injuries. For such advanced beings, they're surprisingly incompetent.
Alberino calls them the clumsy face peelers. He says if their real goal was to harvest organs or faces or DNA, they have the technology to do it cleanly and without ever being seen. They could just abduct people from their beds without a trace.
So why the big, dramatic, terrifying show?
He believes the face peeler legend is being used as a cover story. That this is a psychological warfare operation, a psyop.
A psyop for what?
To mask a different operation. If you want to operate with impunity in a remote region like this, maybe for illegal resource extraction, maybe for human trafficking, you need the locals to be terrified of something else. If they think it's Los Pelicaras, the supernatural face peelers, they lock their doors at night. They don't investigate strange lights. They attribute it all to dark folklore.
It provides the perfect cover.
The perfect cover. But Alberino ultimately rejects the pure alien theory for this specific case. Because they spoke Spanish. Because they were clumsy. He believed the core of this is a human syndicate. Maybe even what some researchers call a breakaway civilization.
Breakaway civilization, that's a huge concept. What does that actually mean? A secret country on Antarctica?
It's more about the privatization of power. The theory goes that for decades, top-level aerospace contractors have been working on classified technology. Some say reverse engineered from recovered UFOs. At some point, that technology becomes so advanced and it's moved so far into the private sector.
To avoid government oversight.
Exactly. The Freedom of Information Act applies to the Air Force. It does not apply to a private corporation like Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works or a shell company they might create. If you move these legacy programs into the private sphere, they go completely dark. They are accountable to no one.
And Alberino is suggesting that a rogue element, a criminal syndicate using this private, off-the-books super technology is operating in the Amazon.
And their motive might be the oldest and darkest one of all. Human trafficking.
He connects this to the testimony of Michael Herrera, doesn't he?
Yes, a crucial link. Michael Herrera is a former U.S. Marine who testified under oath that while on a humanitarian mission in Indonesia in 2009, his unit stumbled upon a massive octagonal UFO hovering in a jungle clearing. But it wasn't being operated by little gray aliens. It was being loaded with large, unmarked crates by a paramilitary group of humans. Americans wearing unmarked uniforms, carrying weapons he'd never seen before.
And Herrera believes those crates contained people.
He does. So the theory Alberino is proposing connects these dots. A global operation using UFO-like technology for nefarious human-on-human crimes. Slavery. Organ harvesting.
And there was a major military exercise happening in Peru at the exact same time as these face peeler attacks.
Operation Resolute Sentinel, a massive multinational exercise involving the U.S. Space Force, the U.S. Marines, and various South American militaries, all happening right there in that region at that time.
That can't be a coincidence.
Well, Alberino poses a few possibilities. Was the official military there to covertly fight these entities? Or was the entire exercise a cover? a way to flood the zone with military traffic to provide a distraction while the syndicate did its work. Or, maybe the most chilling option, was the syndicate actively testing its advanced technology against the state-of-the-art detection systems of the U.S. military.
It creates the ultimate fog of war. You don't know who the players are.
It paints a terrifying picture of a group that has achieved the apotheosis we talked about. They've become like gods through their technology. But in the process, they've lost their humanity. They now view the rest of us as just resources, lab rats in the jungle.
So let's try to tie this all together because it's a lot. We started with a 12-foot-tall biological giant in a cave in Afghanistan in 2005, and we ended with high-tech, face-peeling humanoids on hoverboards in Peru in 2023. They seem like completely different worlds.
They do, but Alberino argues they are two sides of the exact same coin. They both represent a hidden reality that the powers that be, for whatever reason, are desperate to suppress.
The Kandahar Giant represents the ancient reality.
The ancient biological reality. The possibility that we are not, and have never been, the apex predator on this planet. That there are other intelligences, the old gods, the giants, that view us as little more than food.
And the Pilakaras in Peru.
That's the modern technological reality. The possibility that a faction of our own species has advanced so far, so secretly, that they now view the rest of us as raw material, as livestock.
It's that same Luciferian drive again, isn't it? The pursuit of becoming godlike.
Whether you do it by being born a 12-foot-tall Nephilim who can skewer a soldier with a spear, or by building an invisible ship that lets you peel a girl's face in the Amazon, the fundamental dynamic is the same. The powerful preying on the weak, the hidden preying on the ignorant.
That's a lot to process. It fundamentally challenges your view of history, technology, everything.
It forces you to ask a very uncomfortable question. What happens when the technological and knowledge gap between the haves and the have-nots becomes so vast that we are effectively no longer the same species?
A post-human future.
Precisely. And if Timothy Alberino's research is pointing in the right direction, that future isn't 100 years away. It's already here. It's just hiding in the dark caves and the deep jungles of the world.
Well, that was the deep dive. I don't think I'll look at a C-130 or a hoverboard quite the same way again.
And maybe, stay out of the jungle at night.
Definitely stay out of the jungle at night. And for everyone listening, keep asking questions, especially the ones that make the babysitters nervous.
Especially those.
Until next time, stay curious.